Hello and welcome to the On It Not In It interview series podcast. I'm your host, Todd Eppert. Today I'm joined by Joe Martin, who's the president and founder of Martin CSI. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. Would you like to kick us off with a brief background as to who you are and what you do?
My pleasure, Todd. Thanks for having me. Our company is an industrial control systems integrator. We do the electronic and computer control systems for manufacturing. So a lot of our customers are discrete manufacturers such as automotive, plastics, castings, those types of things. We also do work in the process industry. So that would be food and beverage, chemicals, and so on.
Okay.
Our team is all electrical engineers. Started the company back in 1993, grew to about 25, 30 people where we are now. We kind of fluctuate. Had a little hard time with COVID, but we're recovering from that. And I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Awesome. So, Joe, why don't you share with us as well, where exactly are you located in Ohio?
We're in Central Ohio. We're actually in Plain City, which is sort of a suburb of Columbus.
Yep. And do you work just in the state? Do you work in the region? Do you work across the world? How does your company reach?
I'd say probably 70% of our work is within the region, but we do work nationwide. We do some work up in Canada.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for those fill-ins. That'll help us understand exactly how you serve and what you do. So I'm going to take you back in time because we're going to get to it in a little bit, but I might as well start here. You've been at this for 30 years. So congratulations. Well done. It takes a successful business and a successful business owner to get past 3 to 5 years, let alone to 30 years. So if you can remember back, what led you to take that leap into the entrepreneurial world?
So when I got out of college, I started working for an OEM, original equipment manufacturer. And back in the day, this is when we were taking those old clunky relays that basically was the technology at the time and turned it into integrated circuits. So we were basically, my job was to redesign the control systems for the machinery to this new technology. I recognized a need for our customers, our end users, to have somebody come and help them integrate this new technology, this new equipment with their old stuff. The company at the time wasn't interested in providing those extra services. And I'm not sure what the reasoning was, but that led me to find employment with an actual engineering firm that did this type of stuff. And I'll tell you what, I was in heaven. I just thought, this is it. This is what I love to do. The only thing that's missing is the ownership component. And part of the negotiation I had when I was hired was that after 2 years, if things were working out, then we would start talking about opportunities and ownership. Well, about a year and a half, it wasn't happening. I was recognizing that the company was not growing or developing the way that I would have liked to have seen it. And the upper management was treating employees and customers differently than what my values would support. So I was having some internal conflict with that. And I just remember it was in the summer of 92. I was sat on my dad's back porch, and he says, for as much stress and heartache that you're going through, you might as well be working for yourself. And he was right. He was right. The only thing is that if I knew then what I know now, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I did take the leap. That fall, I left my job, put together a business plan, talked to an accountant and an attorney, and incorporated on January 3rd of 1993.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you for that background. You shared a couple things that I think resonate with our listeners. First and foremost, you saw a need in the marketplace that no one else was filling, right? And so that's the first thing that you talked about. The second thing is you found a smaller company to work for where you thought you might get some ownership opportunity. That didn't come to fruition, and so you had to make a change, and out of a need for your own desires, which was to be an entrepreneur, own a business, that you had to create it yourself. And so I think those definitely resonate with our listeners, because I think most of us start a business because there's a need that's unfilled, and whoever we're working for doesn't see the need for us to be owners.
and I would agree with that, Todd. A lot of the guys that I hear, a lot of the people I know that have started their business, they didn't start it to make a lot of money. They made it because they saw a need and they saw an opportunity to take it, and they decided to take a chance. And it was a labor of love. It was a passion that they had to go out and fulfill this need and provide this service or make this product or whatever it was. Making the money was kind of the afterthought, the side, this, if you were doing it right, you just automatically made money.
Yeah, money's the result of the good things that you do, right?
Yes.
And the passions that you're able to work through in your own business.
And the people that I've seen that were focused so much on the money were not successful. They were the ones that they would peter out after about 3 years.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree because there's no passion behind it. Making money is important, but it's not what drives your passion, right? It's usually you mentioned that when you joined your small company, you loved doing what you were doing, and this is what I want to do.
Yep.
To be an owner, right?
Yep.
So very good. So you also mentioned in that introductory conversation, you said, knowing what I know today, I might not have done it. So why don't you share some misconceptions with our listeners about running a business and owning your own business?
So owning your own business or operating a small business as a majority owner, it has some issues. Obviously, the rewards are there. It takes a lot of hard work and commitment, which most people are willing to put forth. But what you don't realize is that the economy is not just as stable as you'd expect. There are ups and downs. And, our industry, we service manufacturing, and manufacturing has big ups and downs. There have been several times where I've had to kick in my own money to make payroll. And my dad always said, you're not a businessman unless you've had to make payroll. Never understood what he meant until I had to raid my savings account. And that's happened more than once. If you want to grow your business, you have to figure out where you're going to get capital to do that. If you don't have profits squirreled away, you're going to the bank, you're investing your own money, those types of things. Opportunities come along, and some of them can be expensive opportunities, but you see the payoff at the end of the day. So there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of energy there, but you need somebody that's more level-headed, grounded to run it by, that can take the emotion out of it and help you think it through. Is this really where you want to spend your money? Do you really want to take your kid's college fund and invest in this 3-year plan type of thing?
Yeah, love that. Love that. So couple things, again, you're dropping some wisdom. I love it. So the first thing you talked about was rating your own accounts to pay your employees. So one of the things I do love to share and talk about with entrepreneurs is you get paid last, right? But you also can get paid the most, right? So, but you got to remember that cycle. Like I can't not pay my people. They're relying on the income in order to live, to put food on the table. And if I can't do that, then they're going to go find another job. And I lose all that talent and all that investment I've made to build that employee. So putting that rainy day fund aside is really important, because when pandemics happen, there's a gap between when I need that cash and when the government's going to give me my PPP money, as an example, right?
Yes. And, after the first downturn that we had, I'm going to say it was around 2002, 2003, our office manager, who was she was probably 55, and she had her own business for a long time. She said, you know what, we need to start putting money aside for a rainy day fund. And we set up a plan so that every check that came in the mail, 5% of that would get deposited into a savings account. The rest of it would go into checking, and that's what we would operate on. And we built a nice cushion of cash doing that. It was a great suggestion.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So listeners, pay attention. I love that one. 5% of every bit of revenue that comes in goes into your rainy day fund. That's a great idea. Okay, thanks for sharing that. So that's what you faced in the past, and hopefully you're through that today. It sounds like you are, or at least you're recovering from it, which you mentioned before we started the conversation around coming out of pandemic. Right. But just out of curiosity, what are the biggest challenges you're facing today? 30 years in business, you've got employees, you've got obviously a healthy business at 30 years old. So what are the current challenges you're facing?
We are still dealing with operational issues. We're growing, and we're not growing by leaps and bounds. We're trying to control our growth, but the growth brings with it issues nonetheless. So we'll have bottlenecks in sales, we'll have bottlenecks in engineering, we'll have bottlenecks in marketing, we'll have bottlenecks, in commissioning. It just seems like there's always another part of the business to work on. So we have policies and procedures in place that basically take care of the stuff, but you can't capture everything. So we have this mindset that we're going to be smart enough to figure out the problem once the problem presents itself. We're not going to try to figure it out before it gets here, because we'll never get anything done. And that's kind of how this has been working. We'll have a bottleneck in getting resources assigned to projects. Right now, we've got a fairly large backlog of work. We can't break loose resources to get started on it. Well, we're smart people. We sit around a conference room table, we have this discussion, and we figure out what it is. And I think the key to that is to sharing the big picture with all the key employees that are involved in that decision-making process, so everybody can see the entire problem from all the different angles. And therefore, as we're talking about solutions, we know that it's a holistic type of solution.
Yeah. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the bottleneck moving around the organization, you're playing whack-a-mole, right? Like,
yeah.
Whack that one, whack this one, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that is what happens in small business, because, and candidly, I think that's what happens in all businesses, because we never have the right amount of resources, the perfect amount for all times. To go back to what you said, it's because our demand is not steady, right? It's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. And so you try to run a lean organization, and then when the volume comes in, you're like, oh boy, what do we do now, right? Can our customers wait? Can we build that backlog? Can we slow down a little bit to speed up later?
Well, coming out of the pandemic, we faced exactly that. We had customers putting projects on hold. And then as the pandemic was kind of wrapping up, it was like, okay, we're now going to let these projects out. But there's like 6 projects instead of 2.
Yeah.
We can do 2, we can't do 6. It's like, could you guys like hold the other ones for us until we get these finished? No, nope, we got to keep our schedule. So everybody got projects. Everybody was employed.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate that. So you've talked pandemic, we've talked different challenges you've had, and you've talked about technology changes in your own industry, the difference that what we were looking at relays before, and now these fully integrated circuits and things like that. But so the business landscape is constantly changing, right? Yeah. It's evolving. We're under the pressure of the people evolutions, the technology evolutions, the pandemic evolutions, the pivots. What do we got to do? So do you have any specific strategies that you use in innovation to remain innovative?
I'm sorry, you broke up there a little bit. I didn't hear the question.
Oh, I apologize. So the question was, are there any specific strategies that you use that Martin CSI to really stay innovative?
So when we plan our sales, when we do our budgeting for the next 3 years, we look at a particular employee's productivity. What can we reasonably expect? And we can reasonably expect about 80 to 85% productivity. And that's because we expect them to take on so much training. And then, of course, then you've got other downtime, PTO holidays and such. Our people are the ones that deliver the technologies. Our vendors, the manufacturers of the equipment that we use, are constantly introducing new products. We have to stay on top of that. And so we build into our budget the training, the downtime, the purchase of equipment, the space, those types of things, so that we can be proactive and bring the vendors in, take a look at the equipment. We decide this is the technology we think is going to be the best for our customers, or we see our customers have selected this technology. We have to come up to speed on that. That's probably something a lot of companies fail to do, at least in my opinion, is to plan for that future change. We build that into our budget.
Excellent. I love that. I do run into a lot of companies that would say, people are our most important asset. And the question, okay, well, how much do you budget for training every year? And they'll say 0. That doesn't make any sense, right? But it's common.
Yes. And so in terms of budget, not only do we budget the money for the training, but we also reduce the expectation of revenue, because those people aren't here for that time to produce the buildings.
Yeah. So you're doing it from both ends, which is great. And you're making sure that you're planning accordingly their revenue, but also giving them the time to do the training, but
Exactly.
also the money to spend to get the training done, which is great.
Yes.
I love that. Okay, so can you give us a glimpse of what your future plans are? Have you thought about like future goals of the business? And again, remember, please don't share anything that's proprietary, but some general things that you can share with us.
Sure. So our business was a lifestyle business for so many years. And that's really all I knew. My dad had his own business. It was a construction construction industry, and it was a lifestyle business. And that's all I knew how to do. And it was a command and control. Everything kind of flowed through me. In 2015, I made a change and decided that we're going to be a growth business and we're going to groom this business for sale. So for the past 10 years or so, we have been doing those things that helps to improve the value of the business. One of the things that we did was we implemented EOS, as in described in the book Traction by Gino Wickman. And that basically allowed me to build an executive leadership team that in 2017 was able to run the company day to day. I was no longer involved. And that's a little scary. I mean, to let go and trust that these people are going to make the right decisions or the decisions the way you would do it. And it was a rough road. It was a rough road. We went into the pandemic. There was some disconnects. We were able to pivot quickly. Luckily, the team was in place. It wasn't me making the decisions. They were coming up with it and they were implementing it. Afterwards, we made some changes to the leadership team. And at this point, I have to say we've probably got the best leadership team we've ever had. It's hitting on all cylinders. And we are actively talking to suitors about strategic sale of the company.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate the transparency there as well. So yeah, so I think it's a great point to point. You had to work on your business to make it available to be able to sell it, right? Which is the whole point of this podcast, is we call it On It, Not In It for a reason, right?
Yeah. So going back to the lifestyle business, I was working in the business. I had a job. I was employed by the company and I did my portion and I got my paycheck. When we decided to change all that, it became a little different business model. And now I had to focus on working on the business, figuring out the best way to get the business to run by itself autonomously, things, policies and procedures in place, those types of finding good people that can come in and think like an owner is I found to be pretty difficult.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. They don't, not everybody thinks like an owner, right? A lot of people think of it like paycheck, but you can look for those things. You can look for that entrepreneurial spirit in people. Yes. And look for that. So very good. So just one final question for you, Joe. So final opportunity to give some. So obviously 30 years in business, you've done a lot of work in your business. You've been very successful to maintain a business for 30 years. So what advice would you give our aspiring entrepreneurs who are just starting their journey, or maybe those early phase entrepreneurs that are hitting a wall of some kind and they need some advice to get through it?
I would say that they need to get some help. And by that, I mean two areas. First of all, peer groups. Find a peer group that you feel comfortable in. There are various organizations that have peer groups. Some of them are industry based, some of them are community based. Like here in Columbus, there's several groups that are just any business can join. Of course, in our industry, we had specific industry, but we had different geographic areas and different industries that we serve. The fact is that as a CEO, as a president of a company, and especially a young company, you're very much alone. To be able to have a buddy that has a similar business or has similar problems or maybe see things differently, just to be able to brainstorm with a small group of people on a regular basis. I always say you get 10 times more return for everything that you put in. So you bring one idea to your peer group, chances are you're going to walk away with 10. Not necessarily going to execute all 10. Maybe 2 or 3 will decent, but they're going to be there for you. The other thing I would say is to find a mentor, find somebody that you can sit down and talk with one-on-one about your business problems. And honestly, as a small business owner, it's more than just business, because you've got your social life and you got your family life.
Yeah.
And like I this holistic approach, you've got to think about all of you, not just your business world, because what happens in business is probably going to affect what happens at home. What happens at home is obviously going to affect what happens socially. It all ties together. So find a mentor, a coach, a counselor, whatever, maybe two. In my case, we had one that was for my wife and I, and this counselor specialized in people that own small businesses and all the problems that brings. And then I also had a second one that was more of a professional counselor that was able to help me make decisions, and not necessarily make them for me, help me make the decision and walk me through it. And a lot of times was able to hook me up with other people that he knew that either had similar problems or offered something that might be able to help me out. Those kind of connections are invaluable. And I would say that would be my advice.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks for sharing that, Joe. So yeah, so peer groups, roundtables, and then trusted advisors, consultants,
Trusted
coaches,
advisors.
folks
Perfect.
that come alongside you. Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. Love to hear that. So Joe, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. You shared a lot of wisdom with our listeners out there. We really appreciate it. It was great meeting you, learning more about your entrepreneurial journey and your future plans. To everybody listening, watching out there, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you and listening to you on the next episode. Joe, thanks again.
Thank you, Todd.
All right.